All right, I got 10:03. Like I said, I don't know how many to expect, but I'll be happy to run the meeting for 9 people if that's what we have. If everyone's okay with that. We're recording this, as I said, so if you missed this meeting and you're watching it on YouTube, that means I successfully put it on YouTube after the meeting's over. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce my guests again. Brothers, if you are not speaking, in fact, I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to go ahead and mute you if you're not one of our 3 speakers. If you have questions, there'll be a chance later to ask your own questions. Brother Felipe, did you successfully bring in Brother Moises?
He didn't reply to me, so I
okay, all right.
You went or not.
Okay, so we have here, I don't know what order you see them in, but you see their names at the bottom there, so you can figure it out. There's only 9 of us here. I thought Brother Sands was joining, but could be here in a sec. So we have Brother Rubens Caldera Monteiro, and Brother Felipe, Coelho, is that correct? Coelho, and Brother Luis Felipe Moura, who I'll call Luis since we have 2 Felipes. And all 3 are the members of Masons. They are Masons from Brazil. I don't know much beyond that, so I'm going to ask them questions and just go back and forth, and they'll elaborate further. I already understand they're from different Orients, so this should be a lot of fun going through this. Okay, starting with Brother Rubens. How many lodges in your Grand Lodge?
Okay, I'm from the Grand Lodge of State of Rio de Janeiro, and we have 205 lodges and 6,300 members. Okay, and that is York Rite or Scottish Rite or what? Usually in Brazil we have 9 regular rites.
Okay.
So my lodge works in the York Rite, but it's not the American Rite. It's like a English ritual actually.
Okay.
It's a little bit different actually. And in my Grand Lodge, we work in 6 of the regular rites.
Okay. And so how many, let's go, Brother Felipe, how many lodges in your Grand Lodge? And how many Grand Lodges are there in Brazil?
Sorry. In my Grand Lodge, we have about 100 lodges with 2,000 members. And we have in Brazil, I believe, 3 great jurisdictions that are the Grand Lodges for each state, 27, Grand Oriente of Brazil, and the independent lodges of the Confederates, Comabi, that's not Confederates. I believe Luis Felipe is from Grande, Paulista, am I right?
And what's the name of your Grand Lodge, Felipe?
It's Grand Lodge of the state of Pará.
Pará.
The north of Brazil. Yes.
Okay. And Brother Luis, how many lodges in your Grand Lodge and what's the name of it?
Okay, so my Grand Lodge, actually a Grand Orient, it's called Grande Oriente Paulista. So it would be, Paulista means something that is from São Paulo, all right?
Okay.
So we have 300 lodges and around 9,000 members. In São Paulo is probably one of the largest Freemasonries in South America, because we have around, I think, 1,300 lodges total. And as Brother Felipe was saying, here in Brazil we have 3 different systems, and I think it's important to give a tiny little background on that. Okay, so we have originally we had the Grand Orient of Brazil, and around the beginning of the 20th century, there was let's say, it was a time when Freemasonry wasn't exactly as defined as it is today, structurally speaking, and there were some differences between some ideas of leaders as to how Freemasonry should be organized, And then around the beginning of the 20th century, a brother called Mario Bering, he was here from São Paulo, and he broke off from the Grand Orient of Brazil and decided to create a system of local Grand Lodges, much like Freemasonry in the United States. So because of that, we had the Grand Lodges. We have the state Grand Lodges, and we have the Grand Orient. The Grand Orient is a little bit like the United Grand Lodge of England, right? It's one organization that spreads throughout all Brazil. And the state Grand Lodges, they are independent, and they form a sort of a confederation. All right, so that was the beginning of the 20th century. Around the time of the military dictatorship in Brazil, around the 70s, there was an election in the Grand Orient of Brazil, and the administration didn't accept the results of the election very well, and there was a great fight over this, which resulted in several local branches of the Grand Orient of Brazil breaking off from Grand Orient of Brazil and organizing the Confederation of Independent Grand Orients. So, and this was around 40 years ago. And so Brazil has three huge structures, let's call it that, which is what Felipe was alluding to. One of them is the Grand Orient of Brazil. The other one is the Confederation of Grand Lodges, which is very similar to what you have in the United States. And then we have the Confederation of the Independent Grand Orients, which is also very similar to what you have in the United States. So we have these three groups, and very recently, I mean, and when I say very recently, I mean something like 2 years ago, these three, they decided to break bread and make peace, and everyone has been working, and we're living a beautiful time in Freemasonry in Brazil, because we are seeing these three finally at peace and working together and accepting one another, which is also resulting in a lot of recognition to the independent Grand Orients, which are the youngest of them all over the world. And my Grand Orient, Grande Paulista, is actually being recognized by the Grand Lodges in the United States. It was approved by the Confederation in the United States for signing, right? And the pandemic, of course, put this to a halt a little bit, but it's already settled. It's only a matter of, you know, putting ink on paper. Let's put it that way. So also another point I wanted to tell you guys about what Rubens said, you know, the rights. This is also something that Brazilian Freemasonry is very similar to French Freemasonry because of the influence. Our first influence was France, okay? Through Portugal, of course, but it was France. So for all of the 19th century and a great deal of the 20th century, France was France was our inspiration. Let's call it that. So we don't have it's our system here is not like the British craft or even the craft that you have there, right? Each Grand Lodge has its craft, and that's what you work with the 3 degrees. No, we have separate rites. We call them rites, and each rite is like a craft on its own for the 3 degrees, but most of them also have higher degrees, which of course are independent from the Grand Lodge, right? Much like some of you guys in the United States call the blue craft part of the York Rite, but the York Rite goes all up to the Templar encampment. And so here we have that. And the most common rite that we have in Brazil, and I think we could talk some more about that later on, is the Scottish Rite. So the York Rite, the American craft, is becoming very popular here in Brazil, but it's still far less than...
Just to wait, Luis Felipe, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Rubens.
What Luis Felipe is saying, that the Scottish Rite is about 80% of the lodges working in the Scottish Rite for the craft. So we're not talking about the higher degrees, the beyond the craft, but it's for the craft.
Right.
So
I think a lot of our brothers here at least are in the know that what we consider appendant bodies like the Scottish Rite actually confer the Blue Lodge degrees in many other countries. So in your Grand Lodge, Rubens, is it like York Rite, or do you actually have a Scottish Rite that confers the craft degrees in Brazil? Is that a separate body that does that, or how does that come up?
No, as Felipe was telling us, we have for the craft, we have different forms of working.
Okay.
So we have this Scottish Rite. So it's like Louisiana, I think Michael, and they have, like in Louisiana, a dozen maybe of lodges working in the Scottish Rite for the craft.
Right.
But another lodge working the American Rite, let's say this way, or the English ritual like emulation and stuff. And then after this, we go for the higher degrees in different bodies. So
I was gonna get to that. Yeah, that was on my list. So each lodge can choose, Rubens? Each lodge can choose which rite they're going to practice.
When they're created, they choose.
They choose one rite. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah, same here for me.
Right. Brother Felipe, your Grand Master, is he elected every year? Does he serve multiple years, or what's typical?
Yes, usually for 2 years of mandates.
Usually 2 years, and then he moves on.
Yes.
Okay. Brother Luis, how many officers would be in your Blue Lodge, and which ones are elected?
Well, there are plenty, and usually we elect the Grand Master and his.
I'm talking about in the Blue Lodge.
Oh, in the
craft lodge. Yes, at the craft lodge level.
Well, that also depends. As Ruben was saying, it depends on the rite, which is similar to a working. Okay?
Let's just take your lodge, because I know we have a whole bunch of different examples. But
usually we elect the worshipful master and the wardens, and I believe I think some of the other officers are also elected, but not all of them. Some are chosen by the worshipful master.
Right. Okay, so that's typical. Brother Rubens, is it called a Blue Lodge or a Craft Lodge, or what's the typical name for your basic lodge?
We just say usually Augusta e Respeitável Loja Simbólica. Usually in Brazil we use this name. August and Respectable Symbolic Lodge.
Symbolic Lodge. I've heard that.
Usually we have this. This is a distinct name, but this is a Masonic lodge usually.
Right.
We just don't say okay, it's Craft or Blue Lodge. It's the Masonic lodge.
Yeah, we have names. We're in Virginia. We have names and numbers. Most American Grand Lodges have names and numbers. Massachusetts and Hawaii do not use numbers, but every lodge uses names, as far as I know. But yeah, I was thinking in the generic term. Well, in the Blue Lodge, or in the Symbolic Lodge, or in the Craft Lodge. I've heard all these different terms used. Primarily in America, we just say Blue Lodge. Okay.
Here usually symbolic
lodge. I like that. Okay. Brother Felipe, what is the average age of members of your lodge?
They're a bit, maybe 60 years old,
Okay.
I think I'm one of the youngest members.
Right, we're younger. We all seem to be young, except for Bill. We're all younger.
There seems to be another commonality, at least in the lodges that I've been in, is like I see you three brothers. You all have full heads of hair. Most guys in the lodge, they either look like Bill on our side, or they look like me
Or Edward, yeah. Well, I think we have a good cross section here. Well, I'm actually older than I look. I'm blessed to have good genes, I guess. And so, Felipe, how many members in your lodge in particular, and is that typical?
Right now we have 32 members.
Okay.
Okay, and it's possible for many of them to participate nowadays because of these online meetings.
Right. Okay. Brother Luis, within your Grand Lodge, are there districts or other ways to organize the symbolic lodges under the Grand Orient?
Yes, we have districts, and we call them macro regions.
Okay.
So, especially because São Paulo is a huge state, it's very big. So we need that, and we have delegates. We call them delegates. They are the people responsible for the macro regions.
Okay.
Kind of like a district grandmaster.
Right. We have district deputy grandmasters in Virginia.
Okay.
They're called other things elsewhere, but and are they appointed then these delegates? Does the grandmaster appoint them, or does the lodges choose them?
I think the grandmaster appoints them. I'm not sure,
Okay.
because I've been I was actually in the Grand Orient of Brazil and then Grand Lodge of São Paulo, and I've been in the Grand Orient Paulista for 2 years. So some
Okay.
administrative things about the Grand Orient, I'm not
Certainly.
very familiar.
That's quite all right. Brother Rubens.
Just Chris, just a curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah, usually here we have the delegates, like the DGGM we have, but they inside the Grand Lodge we say delegates, but we don't put this in the card, because usually if some thieves or stuff like this get this document with delegate, would be confused with policy, a cop or something like this. Seems like police. It's not is a delegate for police, like a sheriff or stuff like this. And they don't put this. They put the name of a regional coordinator. So it's our delegate to avoid the misconfusion with the cops. So
Right.
it's awful actually, because of the safety of the guys. We avoid using outside the doors the name delegates, because
it's the same word for a deputy chief or
Right.
sheriff.
Right. Yeah.
Same
I
word
don't.
in Portuguese.
I don't think anyone would mistake a district deputy for being a deputy sheriff, but I can see where it's the same name, but I don't think we'd ever make that mistake.
And it's interesting, but the DGGM, they don't have the same status like they have in England or US.
Mhm.
They are nominated by the Grandmaster, and they change each end of term.
Right.
So it's more like you have a term for the 3 years, like the Grandmaster, and then you change. Some of them may still continue working as a deputy district grandmaster, but usually many of them change.
Well, for y'all's sake, what we do in Virginia is each district, and we have, it goes up to 56. We have about 35, I think, districts in Virginia, each with anywhere from 5 to 10 lodges. Each lodge will rotate their turn to nominate a district deputy. It is an honorary title, but you do have a lot of work too. But you have to be appointed by the Grand Master. So we recommend to the Grand Master, Mark is our district deputy for District 6 or whatever. And then the Grand Master can either take him or he say, no, I don't like him, I'll put in someone else. And recently it seems the Grand Master has no qualms with saying, I don't like that guy, I'll put in who I want. But it leaves it to the lodge to at least recommend. Now, Mark's in an unusual position. He is the district deputy for the research lodges. We have 5 research lodges across the state. And we would technically be in the district for Richmond. But it didn't make sense for a research lodge because we have an official visit from the district deputy every year. And it didn't make sense for him to come visit the research lodge and treat us like any of the other lodges in that district, because we have our own rules. We don't have to comply to the same thing the blue lodges comply to, because we are a blue lodge, but we're a research body. We don't make Masons. You have to affiliate with us to be a member. So we're in our own category. And it was an experiment that 2 Grandmasters ago decided to put in place, where he would create a new district just for the research lodges, which basically stretches technically over the whole state. Pretty much it's Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, Richmond, and then Norfolk, where the research lodges are. But since we have different rules, we have a district deputy addressing our specific needs. And Mark's actually been in office 2 years, where normally they swap them out every year. So it's still a work in progress, but it's also to give the Grandmaster feedback on how the research lodges work and what they can do to improve. I'm in favor of the idea. Some people aren't, but it's what we're doing currently. So it is an interesting change of pace. All right, Brother Felipe, how long is the process to go from an EA to a fellow craft to Master Mason? What's typical?
Typical 1 year here in my Grand Lodge. Some can take longer time to become a fellow craft. It depends of their studies. But
they have to learn a catechism.
1 year.
They have to learn. Okay, so it varies. And however long it takes them to learn.
Usually they take 1 year or 1.5 years, but even if they learn before this 1 year of time, they still have to wait this time.
They do have to wait. Okay, so
Yes.
he could be ready in a week, but he'd
Yes.
have to wait a certain period of time. Interesting. Okay, because for us, it's as quickly as you can learn it. Some people have done it in a matter of a few weeks. Some can take a year or longer. Okay.
Actually, if the worshipful master consider that this internet apprentice can advance, he can ask for the Grand Lodge to allow him to become a fellow craft, for example.
Okay. All right, Brother Luis, what are the dues in your symbolic lodge? What are the yearly dues? Are they yearly dues or monthly dues, and how much is that?
Most lodges in Brazil work with monthly dues.
Okay.
But when I say dues from the lodge, I'm talking about rent. Most lodges don't own their own space.
Right.
So we have to pay the rent, and we have to pay electricity and all that stuff.
Right.
And well, as for the Grand Lodges, it also depends on each Grand Lodge. So it's nowadays, the dollar here is sky high.
Right.
So I think this is causing a bit of a distortion on the difference, but it also varies a lot from lodge to lodge. But I think here in Brazil, here in São Paulo, you would say around $50, give or take.
A month or a year?
Per month. But for the whole thing, not we also have something very interesting here in Brazil, which is sort of like an insurance policy for the widow once the brother passes. So this also costs a bit, and it's included in the monthly dues.
Okay. All right. And Brother Rubens, besides lodge dues, are there other regular expenses? Like, do you pay for your dinners, or are there normal expenses you pay during the year in addition to your dues?
Well, I saw lodges here. You pay for the dinner. Usually you pay for the dinner, actually, but some lodges include this in the tax you pay monthly for the lodge.
Okay.
Usually I would say like here in Rio, usually about $30, $40 is probably a bit cheaper than São Paulo, but it's still very expensive in Freemason in Brazil, actually. And we have during the meetings, we have like some donations we usually do. We don't have like a charity fund for, you know, like some event, some sort for collecting money from the Britain. So usually you have during the meeting, you get the money for charity.
Okay, cool.
All right. It's not much. You know, taxes in Brazil. Sorry, taxes in Brazil are really awful because usually we cannot discount from our, you know, the taxes we pay for the government. So it's like harder to do donations.
Understood. Okay, Brother Felipe.
May I add something?
Please.
I don't know about the other lodges in Brazil, but in our Grand Lodge, for example, the apprentice who wants to become a fellow craft need to pay for their regalia, for example.
Oh, okay. So how much does that cost?
In dollars, I believe $60.
Okay. I was going to ask you, how do you dress for lodge? And I want to know, like, is it the same for every? I'll start with Felipe. Like, and is it every meeting the same, or is it different for the annual or your stated versus work nights? So what would be a typical, if you go to lodge, how do you dress?
Usually we use the suit with a black tie. In Master Mason's meeting, from my right to use some kinds of hats. And usually we can use some robe but only the Master Mason can use it in the sessions.
Can you use, what's that?
It's like, I don't know the word. A hobby, I don't know if you...
A hobby?
Can I clarify that?
Please.
Yes, please.
Okay, so here's the thing. Here in Brazil, what we have is, if you have a more formal ceremony, you wear a suit, okay? Yes. Usually a black or a dark suit. But we have this thing that we call here balandrau, which is sort of like a raincoat or a scientist coat.
A lab coat.
Jacket, you know, like a lab coat. Yeah, that's right. Which is completely black. And for more casual sessions and meetings, we wear that with the apron over it. Okay, which is, and this is an interesting topic because it causes a bit of a clash, especially between generations, you know, because there are some people from, you know, older generations, they like the more formal style, you know. Some of us who question things a little more, who study a little more, we know that the garment of a Mason is the apron. You know, and the working or the rite can have a few extra things like a hat, for example, for a Master Mason, depending on the rite. But for us, you know, the thing about the suit is that it's not very practical, and it actually hinders people from coming to the meetings. So some of us see the suit as something not very nice, not very good for Freemasonry, you know, and an unnecessary annoyance. Let's put it that way.
Just to clarify, I'll try to be tactful here. So the average Brazilian wouldn't own a suit normally?
That's not the point. It's not that suits are extremely expensive, but they're not very practical in a tropical country.
I see. Okay.
We have, Brazilians are very informal, and weather here is very hot.
Yes.
You know, especially, and if we have a capital city like São Paulo, São Paulo is, I think, the third largest city in the world. You know, so, and it's hot in the summer, you know. We're talking about, I don't know, perhaps 90 degrees, you know, something like that. So to go to the subway, you know, you work all day, and sometimes we have to go straight to the lodge, you know. Sometimes guys will wear the same suit, or sometimes we have things like here, in my case, I work from home, and I don't have anyone to do my laundry. I do my own laundry. And if I have to wear a suit all the time, I have to go to the dry cleaners all the time, you know, for my shirts. And you know, this is how I dress normally. So a polo shirt, jeans. So it's a lot more practical for me to just you know, slip on this quote-unquote black lab coat, coat and
Right.
just put on my apron
Okay,
and go.
that's what I was going to ask. So you'd wear like a polo shirt and jeans with the lab coat over it and your apron on the lab coat. Okay.
Yes.
And you buy your own lab coat, or do you have them at the lodge that you?
No, we buy them. Usually we buy them,
okay.
And some lodges, most Grand Lodges actually will require that you wear a dark, dark pants and dark shoes with this quote unquote lab coat. But in practical terms, most people don't care about that in São Paulo.
Interesting.
You know?
Okay.
And some laws, you know, just are not put to practice.
Right. Well, that's interesting. That's the kind of stuff I was looking for. As an aside here, in Virginia, of course, we wear tuxedos for the annuals. Most lodges wear them. The officers wear them at the stateds, and we wear like sport coat, you know, tie usually, but sport coat and slacks for the meeting, for the regular meetings, and for the research lodges. And we had the Prince Hall Lodge of Virginia come and visit us one time. And we were asking questions back and forth, and they couldn't believe we were dressed as colorful and outlandishly as we were, because all of them had to wear dark suits, black tie, white shirt, no exceptions. And they couldn't believe we're wearing like green jackets and red jackets and loud ties. So it was kind of funny. It's like, we think we're dressed up because I got a tie on. I'm dressed up. And then look at us like, what, you're dressed in like a clown. What is going on? So it's funny that the similarities, even within Virginia, between the two different bodies. Okay, Brother Rubens.
Just a moment.
Please.
In our Grand Lodge, only the Masons are allowed to use the balandrão. Apprentice and fellow craft can't.
What do they wear?
The usual suits.
They have to wear a suit.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.